Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Bible Talk Live. I am Bill Rhodes.
And I'm Brian Carey.
Brian, good to see you again. I'm glad you're here. I'd be here all alone if you weren't here.
We're missing Doug. We're missing him again. This is like a third or fourth week in a row here.
It is.
And we're missing, Doug is such a champion for Jesus. This guy will cheerlead Jesus all day long and do it again the day after that.
He does. He does.
I love that about him, and it's just his absence is really felt. I just really think that I'm looking forward to him coming back.
I am too, and one of the things you always know about Doug is that he's genuine in everything he does. I mean, nothing is fake or a fraud.
Yeah,
he's not
true.
putting on airs, and he loves Jesus, and so that's to me that's everything.
I put the screws to that guy for years. He's really who he is. He's not faking it.
No, and he's even keel about everything. I mean, I just love him. Look for him to be back, and hopefully the next two he'll be back for. We'll see how it goes. But we have been talking about fathers, you and me, and we're going to continue that discussion today. We talked about a couple of things last week, Brian. We talked about one, how society has diminished the role of fathers. And that's been to me, that's been a great problem, not just fathers, but men in general. They have feminized men. They have taken men out of the homes. They have declared in many ways that men and fathers are unnecessary to the raising of children. In fact, many women today are having children purposely without a father or a man involved in their life whatsoever. And so they've been diminished. They've been pushed to the outside. And the result is that in 30% of the homes across America, in fact, some statistics say more, men have been literally pushed aside so that those homes have no man in them whatsoever, no male influence. And when you get in the inner cities, I think I said last week that it's over 70% of homes have no man in them. And as you and I have talked about, in inner cities, kids often turn to gangs because they're like family.
And this is to the severe detriment of the children. I read over 90% of the people in our prison system don't have fathers. And last week you read through all sorts of statistics showing increased poverty and crime and all these problems, behavioral issues and things that befall these children because they don't have a father in their home. And so they're turning to the wrong sources to try and get that masculine influence that their mind needs as they develop as children.
Yeah, the statistics are dismal, and I don't care who you get them from. Those came from reliable sources. Center for Disease Control and other sources who have done studies, Rutgers University, and it's dismal what happens with kids who are raised in one-parent homes. And we realize we're not putting down mothers who have lost their husbands, whose husbands have walked off, whatever it may be. They're often doing their very best and often do a really good job. Mm-hmm. So we're not putting that down whatsoever. We're just saying across the board, the statistics are dismal, that the percentage of those who end up in prison, in poverty and such, is really a great percentage simply because of that. The second thing we did a little bit of was talk about what Scripture says about being a father, and we're going to go more there today. First of all, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're grateful for that. If you're listening to us on radio this morning, we're on early on WFOB 1430 AM. And by the way, we didn't say this last week, but if you're listening to us on radio, you have time to come to church if you would like to. We don't start till 10 o'clock. And so you have plenty of time to get here and be here. We're on every Sunday morning on WFOB at 7:56 a.m. I have no idea why 7:56 a.m., but
don't say anything important in the first 4 minutes. We could just say 8 o'clock.
Yeah, there you go. So, and you can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. You can actually see us recording the program and talking about these things if you would like. So we're glad you have joined us. And this week, Brian, we're going to talk about one of the great stories of the Bible. For people who know any stories of the Bible, this is always one of them that they seem to know at least something about. And it's a wonderful story, and it comes from Luke 15, beginning with verse 10 all the way through verse 32. It's rather long, but I know that you're up to it and you are desiring to read this thing.
Let's
So go
jump
ahead.
in. So we're going to start Luke 15, I'm going to start in verse 10. I'll back up a pinch. So Jesus is talking to his disciples here, and he says, in the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now, before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods that he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against you, both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. And filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son and embraced him and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against you, both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. Kill the fatted calf. Kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For the son of mine was dead, and now he has returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. And so the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. And he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fatted calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, All these years I have slaved for you, and I have never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with me and my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fatted calf. His father told him, Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found.
Yeah, I tell you, that's a great story, and I think the story ultimately represents God with the human family.
The father is. Do you think the father is actually a type of God?
Yeah, I think the father is a type of God. Yeah, and I think particularly the prodigal son is a type of a sinner who sees the error of his ways and comes back and reunites with God. And I think the older son may well represent the Pharisees. He was one who was judgmental and harsh because he had always been there, so he was very stoic about it. And you never gave me a party and that sort of thing. And so I think he kind of represented the Pharisees in all of this. Is there anything that you see in this story that surprises you?
You know, honestly, right at the beginning, when the younger son comes up and demands his inheritance before his father dies, what really blows my mind is that the father agrees to this and gives him money and sends him out, like he lets him go.
Yeah.
Like what father would do that? Like this is mind-bogglingly disrespectful for a son to like go up to his dad and like, I want my inheritance now before you're dead. Just give me half your stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And he's just going to do it. And this father is amazing. The compassion and the kindness that he shows to his son is just it's off the charts. I can't even wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it is, and one of the things that you see in all this is that granted freedom that God gives us, that we have
Have free choice.
yeah, we have free choice. We have the freedom to do what we want, and God's not going to stop us. If that's what you want to do, if that's the way you want to live, then you go ahead and do it. He's not going to keep you from doing exactly what you want to do. And so, it's one of the great freedoms that we have. I often talk about when I do weddings. I talk about this granted freedom that parents give their children, and it's not easy to do, by the way, because you've raised them, guided them, told them what to do for pretty much 18 years or more sometimes, and here they are. They're ready to move out on their own and do their own thing. And granting them that freedom is not easy to do because you know what's out there that's really going to be hurtful to them, and they don't get it yet. And so you want them to listen to you. Keep listening to what I have to tell you. And so I think one of the things that surprised me and didn't surprise me is when he finally reaches a point where he is feeding pigs and their food looked good to him, because he didn't have enough to eat. I mean, so he has squandered everything, right? He has gotten rid of all that the Father gave him, all the hope, and all of that is gone now. And he says, here I am dying of hunger. And he says to him, he says, Father, I have sinned against you. But before he says that, he says, but no one, the text says, but no one gave him anything. And so he has left a home where he had everything into a world where no one really cares all that much, and now he has nothing.
He remembers that even when he lived at home, even the servants had food enough to spare, and they weren't starving. And I think it's interesting too. To continue answering that question, things that surprised me is that this guy was able to eat crow. He was finally able to go, you know what? I was better. I was wrong. I'm going to go to my father. I'm going to humble myself and say, I'm not worthy to be your son anymore. Just hire me as a servant. Like I'm no good. I know I blew it, right? Just hire me on as a servant. I just don't want to starve to death. He's willing to humble himself that much,
Yeah.
and go home. And his father wouldn't hear of that.
Yeah, well, and deep poverty will do that to you. I mean, when all of a sudden you're out on your own, you can't afford the rent, you can't afford the food, and all of those kind of things. One of the first things that comes to mind is actually how good you had it at home, if you had it good at home. That's why a good home here, we're looking at a good home. This father was a good man. He was a good father.
Yes.
And because he was a good father, that home became a sharp memory for this young man. And so when our kids go out into the world and get in a jam, we want them to have the memory of a good home. And that's what that father has given this son, is the memory of a good home. And I like verse 17 for that reason. He remembers. He just remembers. A good father.
When he came, and it says in verse 17, when he finally came to his senses,
Yes.
like he was just out of his gourd at first to give up what he had.
Yeah.
And he thought this was going to be better. You know, the grass is greener on the other side. And he finally came to his senses and realized that is not how that works.
Yeah, and when you look at the situation with this guy, he thought he was going to go out and set the world on fire. He thought everything was going to be wonderful and nothing was going to be wrong and everything was going to be good. And he'd use the money that the father gave him to make more money. Instead, he ends up in poverty, and so he remembers. And this is, and the reason he remembers this because a good father really models responsible behavior. And that's what's missing in a lot of homes, is a father who models responsible behavior. He says, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? His hired hands are well taken care of, and here I am needing food, needing maybe a home to live in, needing good stuff, and I don't have it because I've been trying to provide it for myself. The Father has all of that.
Wow, yeah, it's so he's finally goes, I've done this wrong. I'm doing something wrong here. You know, this was modeled for me better when my dad, and you would love to have a dad like this, who he knew he could come home. There's another thing I think it's kind of between the lines. One of these unspoken things is he knew he could go back. There was something in him. He understood, like he wasn't entirely sure what his status would be, but he believed he could go back home, and his dad would at least let him be a servant. His dad would take him back at least that much. He understood his dad's character was that he was a good man, and he wasn't going to just turn his son out and never see him ever again.
No, that's absolutely a good point. I tell you, when men really exhibit responsible living, we model it for our kids. We want them to know. I mean, with my dad, now he didn't model Christian behavior for me. He did not claim to be a Christian, was not a Christian, but he did model many things. And one of them was his work ethic. I never saw him miss a day of work. For any reason, he was, when it came time to be at work, he was there. He brought home what we needed. He really gave us the basic needs that we needed for survival. And I think, and you'll probably agree, that generally speaking, men in his day really honed that sense of responsibility, doing whatever it took to provide the very basic needs of life. They were good workers.
Oh yeah, that work ethic is something I think that we're seeing slip in this new generation. Could it be a coincidence that so many don't have fathers, or is this cause and effect? We take fathers away, and they're not having this responsibility modeled for them. And now, as we go forward, we see the next generation will just kind of not show up for work, not go to their job. I've seen it at the place where I work. Some of the younger kids, they just
don't want to work.
They just don't show up for a couple of weeks, and if they get fired, they don't care. I'll find something else, and there's no responsibility. And I understand there's other things going on there. You can say, well, the company wasn't loyal to me, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about your personal accountability and you doing what you said that you were going to do.
Yeah, the company has one loyalty, and that is if you work for 8 hours in a day, to pay you 8 hours worth of wages. That's what you agreed to. And so you're right. It's not always favorable. They don't always do the right things. But responsible living causes you to do what you have to do in order to feed your family. My grandfather was a man who grew crops and things like that, raised a family of 11 kids.
Wow.
My mother was the youngest of 11. And so it was hard work. Sherry and I visited where they lived, where they grew up. And you can imagine the little house that they raised 11 kids in. And he died of sunstroke. And something you don't see anymore, virtually, but he died of sunstroke, and it was because of the hard work in the fields that he had done all of his life, trying to make sure that he fed those kids that he brought into the world. I mean, that's modeling responsible living. And, men today need to model some things, don't they?
He means the work ethic, not the sunstroke. That's not
no, that's right.
That's not what we're talking about here.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that's something that I really learned that from my dad too. He was in that same situation. He worked in a factory, and it wasn't a glorious job, and it was just something he got up. He was up at 5 a.m. every single Monday through Friday, and left at 5:30, and he worked at the factory.
Yeah.
And never, I can't even remember if he ever missed a day of work. He would go, and he was just about to tip over dead from a fever. He would still go to work.
Yeah.
Because that's just what you did in those days.
Yeah. My father was exactly the same way, and glad to have a job where they could make, enough money in order to take care of their kids. And so, so one of the things that I really like about it was that modeling responsible living. And so, men need to model manliness. For example, they need to model integrity, honesty. All of those things need to be modeled for kids. You remember the movie Cinderella Man?
Let's see. Did I watch that?
Yeah, the boxer Jim Braddock.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it really happened or not, but the scene was great. He finally ends up having to take help from the government. He did not want to do that. He hated it. And then there's a scene when he's doing better, when he's boxing and he's winning and bringing home money. You see him going back to that same government office with the money he had taken, giving it back to him. Now, that's modeling responsible living, I think.
It's like, this is my job to take care of my family.
Yeah. And it shows how bad he hated doing that. And I don't know if it really happened in his life or not, but I just thought it was a great scene.
It really underscores the kind of character they were trying to build in that particular person. There's always this. A good story tends to have this character arc where the person's gonna, goes from point A to point B, and what changes in them and what doesn't change in them is some of the fascinating parts of the story. Just like this here at the prodigal son. We see the prodigal son. He changes radically from what we see him at the beginning to what we see at the end. The father, we see there's no change in him. That's the same guy from the beginning to the very end of the story.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. He's exactly the same. No matter what his kids are doing, what they're saying, what's going on, he is that very same man. And then that brings me to another one. This is verse 18. And this is something you've already said, so I want to talk about it a little bit. But a good father conveys to his children there's always a way back. This son, what he remembers is the home that he left, and he wants to go back. So a good father conveys that message. There's a way back. What does that mean to you?
Wow. In real life application principle, I just, being a dad, I really get this. There's nothing that I would want to have happen to my children that they couldn't come back to me. I don't want them to rob banks, but if my kid robbed a bank and ends up in jail, I'm still going to go visit you in jail. When you get out, you can still, I'm going to help you. Like, there's nothing
You're going to be my child no matter what.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the kind of love that, you don't get love from the government. You don't get love from the village. That's, that does not, it takes a village. It takes a father and a mother, because these people are invested and they love that son. And it's to a degree that I don't think that most of the kids comprehend. When you see kids that run away, I don't think they get how much that their parents really love them. They think that there isn't love there, so I'm not really losing anything here. And the kid might run away from home or something, and they don't want to. It's like, well, I've burned that bridge and I can't come home. No, you don't understand what's going on. Typically, your mom and your dad love you so much more than you ever wrapped your head around, and you're just in a bad spot right now.
Yeah.
And the dad here in this story is amazing, but I think it's the kind of love that most dads have for their children.
Yeah, I think so too. And we're talking about a good home.
A good home, yes.
A good home. A
not
bad
to say
home.
That there's not bad people. There's bad fathers out there too.
These are good people. They're modeling good behavior. They're showing you the way in life, and somehow that old saying, the grass looks greener on the other side, and somehow you get there. And that's what happened to this guy. Somehow you get there, and it's not greener. It's worse in so many ways. That's what he found out. He found out that love and care that he got from the Father is just not there. He found out that people loving him enough to give him what he needed when he was really down and out just wasn't there. However, he squandered that money. When that was gone, the help that he needed just simply wasn't there. But the Father's saying to him, in the way he treated him and the way he did for him, what the Father is saying to him was that there's always a way back. Always, always, always you can come home. Now,
it's cool too that the son it says in this verse that we just read that the son was a long way off and the Father saw him. He was a long way off. So that means the Father was looking for him. He was spending time hoping that son. He never gave up on his son. He never gave up on his kid.
Yeah.
He was sitting there looking off to the horizon and hoping that child was going to come back someday.
Yeah, and Brian, it's almost as if he knew he'd be back. He's not waiting on chance to work here, that he might be back. I think it's almost as if he's saying inside of his head, he doesn't know what it's like out there. When he finds out what it's like out there, when he's gone, when that money is gone, he'll be back.
That could likely be the case, and especially if this father is supposed to be a type of God the Father, which I agree with you. I think that it is, that God gave you the freedom that you needed to go learn the things you need to learn, but in so doing, you're going to come back to it.
Yeah, it gave you a way home. And I think this is God showing that those who wander from Him have a way back. They can come back to Him, and He's that Father waiting with open arms to accept them. In fact, He's even looking for them, which is amazing. And so, what if He doesn't come home? What happens?
If the son doesn't come home,
Yeah, this is hypothetical, but what if he doesn't come home? What happens?
wow, that father's going to be stuck. He's not going to give up, I don't think. That father's going to continue for as long as he lives to sit there looking off to the horizon, hoping for that son to come back home.
That invitation is still there, isn't it?
It never ended.
Never ended. So no matter how long you've been away from God, the invitation to come back to Him is always there. And so I think that's a huge part of this. So he has two sons. As I've said before, it ought to be called the story of the two sons, not just the one, because the other one is just as prominent. So you have one who goes away and changes and comes back. You have one who stays at home. He never changes, Brian.
And you know what? I don't.
He's bitter.
He's very bitter, but yeah, and I don't think that some of his stuff that he's saying, like, there was nothing you ever asked me to do that I didn't do. I wonder if that's true.
I wonder myself.
I think he's exaggerating some of the stuff just a little bit for
He's
point.
exaggerating his own importance, isn't he?
I'm the important one. Why don't you take care of me? I didn't ask you for half your stuff.
Yeah.
And so that he feels like he's not being loved equally with the younger son. He's jealous at this point.
Yeah, I thought about that too. And the reality is for that older son is that in the end, he not only resents his father, he despises his brother for what his brother did. And one of the things the father tells him, look, everything I've got is yours. I gave him his. He isn't getting that again. What I have left is for you. So it's always been there for you, but he doesn't want to accept that. But a third thing that I saw here was this, and that is a good father is clear about how much he loves his children. I love verse 20. But and we've already talked about this a little bit, so we'll just talk about it just a little bit more. But while he was still far off, the father saw him, was filled with compassion, and he ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. What love, Brian, that father showed for his son. And it didn't start at that moment.
No, that's true. That started at the very beginning. I'll share a quick story of my own. So I'm a young man. I got married, and my wife's pregnant. And you get 9 months to get used to the idea, that you're going to have a kid. This isn't something just like, ta-da! Guess what happened?
Doesn't just show up one day.
Just show up like it's Thursday. There's your, no. You have 9 months to get to this, get used to this idea.
Yeah.
So I'm a young man. I've got all kind of my bravado, and I'm ready for this. I'm prepared for this. I am mentally, physically, and emotionally prepared for this to happen. So my wife, we take her to the hospital. She delivers that child, and Bill, I can't say that I really understood love at first sight before.
Yeah.
But I'm holding my boy in my hands, and now I believe in love at first sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and suddenly I'm crying like a child. I'm crying like a girl. Why am I crying? And I'm mad at myself. I'm holding my boy, and I'm looking into his eyes, and tears are running down my face, and I don't understand it. I had 9 months to get ready. I'm a strong person. I know how to do it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, Bill. I love this child more than I'd cut my arm off for this child. He doesn't understand this.
Yeah.
How much that I love this child.
Yeah.
Right at the start, he didn't do anything. He didn't earn it. I loved him. And so I get it when this father's looking off at the horizon. Maybe this boy's
for him.
20, maybe he's 30, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, no.
He loved him from the beginning.
I remember our daughter, when she had our first grandson, saying to us, I didn't know you could love something this much. And us saying to her, that's exactly how we love you. And so it's just one of those things. Yeah, you see the love of the Father. You feel the love of the Father. The older son, for some reason, missed it. Man, this father has loved him too, just like he loved his brother. He's loved both of them. He's not loving one without loving the other. He's provided for him. He's cared for him. And so that becomes important. Number 4 that I have, and I want to share this with you, a good father sets limits on his children and enforces consequences.
Oof.
Now, I think this is important.
Yeah. Kids don't like the sound of this, but I think this is important. Go on.
Yeah, he says, All that I have, all that is mine is yours, he says to the older brother. These are words of a father to the eldest son, the boy who stayed home but now won't join the party. All that I have is yours. And he doesn't seem to want to get that. So in the context of these words are seeing clear limits. The message is, although we welcome your brother home, his inheritance is been spent, it's gone, and all that I have now is yours. There, even though he came back, he was welcome. There was a party and all of that. He still had squandered what the father had given him. That's all there was for him.
Oh, wow, that's hard
consequences.
reality. There's consequences for his actions. He didn't get off. Well, he didn't get a blank check and no consequences. He his father's going to die someday, and he's going to be once again at the mercy of the people around him. Maybe his brother. Maybe he finds another place, but he's going to be eventually on his own again. In that situation, because his dad has enforced the rules.
Yeah. Now you don't want to press this on God too much, because we can come back to God and all that He has is ours. But the reality is that there is a price to pay for low living. You can be a drug addict, you can be forgiven, but you're paying a price for what you've done in this world. And so I think that's the message that we want people to get, is that there is a price to pay. When you walk away and you squander your living and you live in an immoral, unethical existence, that you can come back to God, you can be forgiven of all of that, but there's still a price to pay.
There is, and when kids are young, you're making them pay a smaller price because they're committing smaller crimes, but you're trying to teach them there's consequences for their actions.
Yeah.
And you're doing this, you never want to spank your kid. You never want to, deprive them of dessert or whatever the thing, you don't want to ground your kid, but you're teaching them stuff. It's for their good. I don't win anything because I grounded my kid for a week. That this is almost a penalty for me. I'd rather have you go out and have fun.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit on you for a week, but I'm doing this thing that seems harsh for the benefit of the son that I love. And I think that's a thing we just don't see that when there's not a two-parent family, when there's not a mother and a father there trying to teach this child.
Yes.
You've got a father who's trying to make that son into a man, who's trying to give strength to that young woman and to his daughter in his life.
Yeah, and behavior in this world has consequences. I remember they used to do this thing at camp that I always thought was interesting. They'd take a post, like a 4x4 that was in the ground, and that 4x4 was just beautiful. And they'd have kids go out and use a hammer or something like that and just beat on it until it was just marred everywhere. And then they talk about the reality that you can come back to God, you can come to God, and it will, He'll change your life. But those scars that they made on that 4x4, those scars are still there, and you can't get rid of them.
Wow, that's a great visualization of that problem.
Yeah,
that's
There's
true.
always a price to pay, and when kids grow up without consequences, that's when they really think that life owes them something. When parents take away all the consequences, when they do everything to get them out of trouble every time, it ends up being a problem. So the last thing I have, Brian, and we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to kind of mention this. If you want to pipe in real quick, you can. But good fathers celebrate life with their children. But this is verse 32, but we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead, has come back to life. He was lost and has been found. This is a party that affirms life. Dancing, really, that celebrates.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Amen. What a great story this is.
Yeah, we want to celebrate with our kids. We want to celebrate life with our kids. All right, I'd like to say more about that. I think we should, but we're just about out of time. And so we want you to know, if you've joined us, that God really tells us how to be good fathers and how to be good mothers. And we hope you're letting Him direct your life. And so please join us next week, same time, on Bible Talk Live.